Welcome to Stroke Forward. My name is Marcia Moran. For the next 40 minutes or so, we are going to talk about things that stroke survivors, or any brain injury survivor, deals with. If you look at me today, you probably don't see a person who had a stroke, but I feel it. My body functions differently. Do I think I will get back to 100%? Yes, because to think differently is to admit defeat. We will talk to all sorts of people who have been there, from survivors to caretakers to doctors, nurses, therapists, friends, and family who have seen us at our weakest. They have cheered us with their victories, no matter how large or how small. How did we get here? That's what this show is going to tell you. Colleen M. Harmeling is the Persis E. Rockwood Associate Producer of Marketing at Florida State University. Colleen's research focuses on stakeholder engagement and customer experience design with an emphasis on the role of morality in consumption and consumer healthcare decision-making. Her research appears in top journals including Journal of Marketing Research, Journal of Marketing, Harvard Business Review, Journal of Academy of Marketing Science, Journal of International Business Studies, and Marketing Science Institute Working Paper Series. She is an area editor for Journal of Academy of Marketing Science and on the editor review board of the Journal of Marketing, Journal of Science Review, Journal of International Business Studies, and Journal of Retailing. In light of her husband, Jeff's, traumatic injury, she redeployed the specific skills that enabled her psychology and sociology-based academic research, critically evaluating and integrating seemingly disconnected bodies of research to identify beneficial protocols and therapies at the cutting edge of medical research and brain health. Her approach on brain health involves an acknowledgement and understanding of the three primary bodies: the physical, the biochemical, and the energetic body, and how these different systems work together to encourage radical healing. Jeffrey Harmeling is owner and personal trainer at 2020 Fitness, a one-on-one personal training gym in Tallahassee, Florida. After a career in college baseball at the University of Tampa, on May 10, 2021, a life-changing accident on a recreational softball field left him comatose. Upon waking, he was paralyzed, unable to speak, and had severe visual disturbances, and was given low odds to recover. Yet, despite these low odds, he reopened his gym just 5 months later, passed his extensive driving evaluation after 6 months, and now provides support for other people facing the seemingly impossible. His success is largely attributable to his own determination, his faith in the body's innate ability to heal, the widely diverse care team of physicians and therapists working on the cutting edge of nutrition, brain health, supplementation, oxygen, and energy therapies, and the love of his family. When he is not training clients, Jeff enjoys playing with his 5-year-old son and spending time with his wife, Colleen.
And so if you tolerate eggs, it's got super high choline that the brain needs to rebuild. And then I would juice for him and add an avocado to it to make it thick enough for me to have him eat. And even the avocado, I'd add avocado collagen and MCT oil to it to kind of balance out the sugars of the juice with some fats. And so we do modified keto. We don't do full-blown keto because that part wouldn't work, but it's also full of easy water, which is like the type of water that's accessible to the cells. So it would help to hydrate his body because we were having trouble keeping him hydrated when he wasn't able to swallow liquids. And so he did get put back on an IV for a couple of days. But yes, so it did take quite a lot of negotiating to be able to do this. And that's why I said that the path we were enabled is unique. You know, I had to talk to the president of the hospital for them to allow me to feed Jeff. And so, and to keep the juicer and the blender in the room. And so I had to prove that a juicer and a blender draws the same ampage as most laptop computers. And so it wasn't going to short out the hospital or anything like that. And then
Every time I hear this, I'm more and more thankful for Colleen.
Yep.
but yeah, and then we got to work. So he would go do therapies and I would video them because he's an athlete, so he was used to seeing himself on film. And I would show him where he was in his progress, because then I could talk to him about, your right leg's not moving. Just make sure you're bending that right leg. And so then the next time he would go to therapy, he would have more visibility on how to communicate to his body. It was almost like this mental mapping that was happening just by videoing him and showing him the videos. But yeah, it was so the food was a challenge. They gave me access to the rec kitchen, so every morning I would cook in the rec kitchen, and then I would warm his soup, and I would warm up some like vegetables, and I'd put him into thermoses, and then I'd make him a breakfast. So he would eat the breakfast right away, and then I'd have his like hot lunch in a couple of thermoses, and then probably 3 or 5 nights his stepmom would bring us dinner, so we would have a warm dinner most nights too. Otherwise we would eat just cold, like shredded chicken or ham. We ate a lot of ham during that time, and then and salads. We ate a lot of salads. He wasn't tasting, so he didn't mind the salads as much as he does today. But yeah, and that was kind of our routine.
So what did you think about the therapists and what they were telling you to do? So tell me, you had speech, you had physical.
We had speech, physical therapy, and occupational therapy. Yeah.
Okay.
And
so when was the first time that you learned about aphasia? Let's start with that.
Yeah, so our speech therapist pretty quickly diagnosed Jeff with aphasia,
Okay.
and said that he had aphasia and dysarthria, and then kind of explained it to me because he seemed delusional. He was saying streams of words that didn't make sense being together,
Mm-hmm.
and he would do lots of pointing and gesturing with his left hand, and at the same time he lost function of his tongue. He lost his swallow function, so he had this dysarthria that was sort of slurring the words that were coming out. And so and then within a couple of weeks they had run some cognitive assessments on him where it was kind of word finding, but then also if this is to this, then, and this is to this, what is this to that? Those kinds of associations. Mm-hmm. I don't know what those are. And they quickly said that his aphasia had resolved, and so it was something I kind of took off my radar for a very long time. And
Mm-hmm.
until pretty recently, when I was saying, no, this aphasia is still problematic. He's just exceptional at compensating, and so another part of our story is that Jeff was in a car accident when he was 17, and he had his first TBI, and so he had mild aphasia for 25 years. So he had learned some almost undetectable compensation strategies that I think enabled him to kind of fly under the radar with this. And so we've just now started speech therapy again to help with the aphasia, sort of with the point of helping with the aphasia. Yeah. And actually Brooks has like one of the leading aphasia clinics just a floor above us, but we never quite qualified for it.
Yeah. So how about physical therapy?
Do you remember physical therapy?
I remember a little bit about it, like the rooms it was in and that kind of thing, but I don't remember like what we did.
Yeah,
Okay.
I remember Brooks, the
the
roof,
outpatient.
yeah, the roof,
How do you-
the outpatient,
The outpatient or the
yeah,
inpatient? Yeah,
the
okay.
outpatient,
Outpatient,
yeah.
yeah, okay.
The rooms we went to do the therapies. I remember saying to them, "You might not know what I do for a living because we need to work harder."
He's a personal trainer, and so that was a big part of this. So, as a personal trainer, he would, and he usually wasn't wrong, but sometimes he would make adjustments to his physical therapy protocols, and then um but yeah, he did extensive physical therapy, extensive speech, and he was part of the brain injury day program, which is 9 o'clock to 3 p.m. Mostly cognitive therapies. So they did um, aphasia therapies there also, where it was just about language skills and communication skills. But the
Mhm.
tricky part about so Brooks inpatient was very much focused on recovery. How much can you recover? How much can you heal? And then when we moved to outpatient, it was mostly on compensation. And this was something that I do think is a part of the recovery, but it should never be at the expense of attempts to heal, because
Right.
there once you start to talk about compensation, you require an implicit belief that healing is not possible.
Mhm.
And that is a different kind of therapy, so you're no longer targeting restoring the integration in the brain. You're targeting how to communicate without ever integrating again, and so that was a different philosophy that both of us had a hard time with. Jeff had a harder time articulating what he was having a hard time with, and then once I understood, it was but we also take more of a holistic approach to healing. So we definitely believe that your body can heal, and it's going to heal at the cellular level. And so if you understand how the cells in the body work, then you can support that healing process in many ways. And so we used all parts of our very diverse medical team um, sort of specifically together. And so we had these amazing physicians who believed in how to heal, and not only believed in how to heal, but could articulate how the body worked together in the healing process and what would inhibit that and what would enhance that. And so we were able to coach sort of the physical therapist. The things we were worried about back then was basically just overstimulating Jeff at a time when he was still very vulnerable to breaking these weakly developed neural pathways. And
Mhm.
so what we would work with them on was making sure during the day program he had adequate breaks and how to identify when he needed a break. And for Jeff, it was when his autonomic brain started to break down. So he would start to breathe through his mouth exclusively, which means his reflex system was breaking down. Um, you could tell that he would start to posture more, so his right arm would pull up. But mostly, and this was when it was almost to the point where it was getting more destructive than helpful, he would get agitated. And so once he was agitated, you knew for sure he was overstimulated, but there were signs that led up to that, that if you could just have him sit in a dark room for just 10 or 15 minutes, then he would be restored. And so sort of like emulating what I was doing in the inpatient, where I would recline him back, put the glutathione oil, and put him in a pitch black room, just to give the brain enough time to absorb all the stimuli that he was just presented with. And the stimuli back then would be things like worksheets and brain games, so things that were cognitively stimulating, even just conversations in their group therapy. So not so much like what we would have probably before this experience thought of as exertion, because before we were both athletes in school, which I also think came into play. We both were practiced in physical therapy, and going to therapy to heal the body. And I think recognizing that the same fatigue your body could have from physical exertion could happen from cognitive exertion was a big learning leap for
Mhm.
us, for me, for sure. And that was something we worked with our team on. And then we sort of supplemented the traditional medical path with quite a few alternative or complementary medical services. And most primarily was functional neurology, which
Okay.
is healing the brain through the five senses. So there's a lot of visual therapy. So one of the reasons why Jeff wasn't walking was because he would go blind anytime he looked down. And when he would go blind, he would lose his body in space. So his proprioception would break down. And so we did these very targeted visual therapies to help restore his VOR and to help reintegrate the systems of the brain. And so functional neurology provided the stimuli, but then we also needed the resources that the brain needs to rebuild on top of that. So you can provide, the way I look at it is the stimuli, these sort of therapies are the blueprints for what need to be built, but then you need workers and you need resources. And so you provide that through nutrition and oxygen. So those are the resources. And then energetic therapies are the workers. So you need that energy to move those resources around the body so that it can build out the systems that you need repaired. And so he did, so far he's done 125 hyperbaric dives. And the hyperbaric dives were incredibly challenging in the beginning. One, because it was a very new therapy to me. I was researching it. And I had read probably 40 medical journal articles on it and decided that this was a very low risk, high potential therapy for him. But then he had severe claustrophobia, which he had never had in his life until the accident. So the accident definitely triggered a kind of negative neural looping in his brain. And so to put him in so a hyperbaric chamber is essentially a glass tube. Maybe I think his is 36 inches, which is a very large hyperbaric chamber. But you can't sit up in it. And it's pressurized and pumped full of 100% oxygen. And what it does is it hyperoxygenates the body and triggers stem cell production and human growth hormone and reduces. So it actually works on gene expression. So it reduces the inflammatory genes and triggers up the human growth hormone, which is what you want, and produces more stem cells, which is what you want, because stem cells are the cells in the body that can differentiate into any cell, including brain tissue, nerve tissue, blood vessels. His was from a blood spilling. What we needed was to trigger angiogenesis. And so angiogenesis is the creation of new blood vessels. And so we were watching as his brain actually restored itself. So instead of neuroplasticity, which also requires a belief that the injury will never heal, but that the brain will wire around that injured tissue, we were looking for any research that would tell us how to trigger neurogenesis. And neurogenesis is the creation of new brain tissue. And so that shift happened after reading extensively. I'm a quite obsessive person, I guess is the only way to say it.
She's a reader.
Yeah. And
Thank God.
here's my coping strategy for when I feel a little out of control. I just read as much as I can until I feel more settled. And so yeah, there are more than 600 published studies on hyperbarics, and they're remarkable. And they're not just most studies that you'll see in medical journals are using symptom indexes. So basically you ask the patient how they feel, they answer on a survey, a battery of different ailments, and then you ask them how they feel again after the treatment's been administered. But the research on hyperbarics is wildly different. And so they will take brain imagery using SPECT scans. So SPECT scans are these types of imagery that they put a dye into your body, and it shows where blood flow is either over or underactive in the brain to see the source of the injury. And so they'll take these images before and after hyperbaric dives and show what we would call, in my world, I do mostly psychology and sociology research for my university, and the difference between subjective, that battery of symptomatic questionnaires, and objective outcomes. And so it's a much more, in my mind, much more rigorous proof of evidence to their efficacy. And so the hyperbarics at 22 dives, you know, I'd had other patients knew we were doing these alternative medicine things, and I could tell them inside out, backwards and forwards, that functional neurology was exceptionally helpful. And it was so brilliant the way that it encouraged Jeff's body to come back online and to help pattern the proper systems and pathways to rebuild from his brain to his body. But when they had asked me in those early days of hyperbarics, I really couldn't tell them. I said, I don't know. I don't think it's really doing anything. And then on his 22nd dive, up until that point, I'd have to sit with him, and he would last around 40 to 45 minutes, and he would panic almost the whole time, and he would get into increasing panics from that claustrophobia. On his 22nd dive, he said, sweetie, you can go run your errands. I'm going to go the whole time. And the whole time was 90 minutes. And so it was this such a visible leap on what was happening inside his brain. You know, it had absorbed an amount of worry, and it never came back. And that's the thing about hyperbarics. Hyperbarics isn't a maintenance strategy. It is a repair strategy. So it is healing the tissue rather than maintaining a state. And so that was a major leap in his recovery, I would say. And then we continued it. So you do a cycle of 40, and it's the part about hyperbarics that's challenging is that it's one dive a day, every day, for 40 days. And
Wow.
so it's an intense therapy. Yeah. And so
We did it.
but we did it. Yep.
That's
She
amazing.
did it, and Zachary did it with me
Yeah, and Zachary, our 5-year-old son,
and her
he would dive with me in the chamber next to Jeff. And so
without a TV.
yes, without a TV. So my little 5-year-old would just do imagination games. Sometimes we were on a submarine. Sometimes, a lot of times we were Transformers, but he would just play. He could sit up in the chamber and play. So that was, but you know, we are definitely a family that heals together.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you've talked about your work. So you need to talk about more. So where does he work? How long was he out of work?
I own a gym. I'm a personal trainer at the gym. I'm the only personal trainer, so it's just me at the gym with my clients. I was out of work from the accident May 10th until probably
October 1st.
October 1st.
So we went back to work with a limited set of clients.
But
October
they
1st
stuck
was
around. My
Sunday.
clients stuck around and
Yeah, and then
did
he
this with us.
expanded slowly. So he started with just 2 clients that to make sure he didn't fatigue. You know, I was worried he'd get overwhelmed very quickly, and he did great. And so then he kind of fully reopened before the end of the year.
Well, in the beginning, when I could not drive, she used to have to take me to work.
Yeah, so I would drive him and drop him off at work, and then
I had to take the driving test again.
yeah. So he passed his driving test in November, the week of Thanksgiving after his injury. So they did
I did not even take it till then, so there wasn't like a fail.
Right, he never tried
I
before
just tried that one time.
Yeah, he just took it that week of Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Thank goodness.
And then,
So what have your clients gotten from the change that you had? Because I'm guessing that you are working very differently than you used to. Is that correct?
In the beginning, I think it was. I went from where I would have a workout and just remember it and be able to do it to have to look at my phone all the time because I write it down or I forget. I had all my workouts written down already, so I could go back and look at them, thank God. And I knew what I wrote and what to do. So we really followed the same guidelines, but I had to constantly, okay, what's next? Okay, I don't want to forget what's next. I had to do that over and over and over again. So thank God that my clients, you know, were a part of this with me. I mean,
yeah. And now how much do you use?
I don't use my phone at all. I just remember and go.
Yeah.
Yep.
His memory has healed quite a bit.
Yep. That's remarkable.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And
So,
then mobility wise though, what did you notice?
Oh, I mean, I was very slow. I had to go early and set the gym up for a workout, and that I probably set about 6 stations per workout for them to do. And I'd have to go very early and set them up because it took me probably, oh gosh, an hour and a half to set up the stations and get ready for the day, which was 2 clients.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would set up the gym for an hour and a half and have clients for 1 hour
Yeah.
total, half hour each.
Yeah.
So
In the very
in
beginning.
the very beginning, but it's gotten easier and easier. But in the beginning, it was very hard because, I mean, I think I used to just grab weights and go, and now my balance was so bad I could not grab a big weight without falling down. It was crazy, crazy.
so how is your balance now?
It's a lot better. I actually told Colleen the other day, I actually felt myself catch myself on my toes, where I would normally have gone forward and fallen. I was able to dig in, feel the weight, and go back. So that was huge for me. I mean,
And now he does workouts on a vibration board,
yeah,
which takes a level of balance that he
Mhm.
just before we got on the call said he did.
push-ups and planks along with other stuff. But for the second time, I did push-ups and planks on the vibe board.
Which helps.
Okay.
10 push-ups is like 1,000 push-ups.
Yeah, it's vibrating at 60 percussions per second. So it's
Intense.
a lot of proprioception. But that's been another part of the
Heck yeah,
therapy
dude.
that helps.
Helps a ton.
Yeah.
A ton.
Okay. So I'm going to start with something different now. So the thing that I find most fascinating about you two is that you try things that are different. So you talked about the hyperbaric chamber. What else that's different have you tried that has worked for you?
The Live O2 is great.
Yeah.
It's like the hyperbaric chamber, but it's direct into your body, the air directly in. It doesn't have to absorb, you just breathe it. So
Yeah, it uses
it's
a
great.
mask and it uses hypoxia to create conditions that allows your body to uptake oxygen more efficiently. And so you breathe deoxygenated air while you're working out. And so you have to get to a level of recovery before this is an option for you. But Jeff is now to that point, and it's mostly cycling on a bike until kind of like HIIT workouts, high intensity interval training, where you get your heart beating very, very hard, which is doing something important. It's increasing your blood pressure deliberately. You know, we're always talking about lowering your blood pressure, but you actually want a slightly elevated blood pressure because your brain is above your heart. And so you're pumping blood up against gravity. And so it's increasing that blood pressure to move the blood more efficiently into the brain. And then it's dilating your vascular system. So all your veins are widening, allowing a bigger amount of blood to flow through them. And then at the same time, you're accumulating carbon dioxide in the cells, which is really important because without enough carbon dioxide, the cells won't uptake the oxygen when it's exposed to them. And so you want that accumulation to happen. And at the very moment you start to hear your heart beating in your head, that's a signal that the blood pressure has reached a level efficient enough to push the blood up into the brain. And so at that moment, you flip this switch and it turns on 100% pure, or it's like 98% oxygen, because we're just using a home oxygen concentrator.
We bought this and it's in our home now.
Yeah, so we have it right here in the what once was our dining room.
Now